Island of the Blue Dolphins by Scott Odell. Chapter 22. I did not go into the cave, nor did I take the necklace from the rock. That night I slept on the headland at the place where I left my baskets. At dawn, I went back to the ravine. There I hid myself on a brushy ledge. It was near the spring, and from it I could see the mouth of the cave. The sun rose and shone through the ravine. I could see the necklace lying on the rock. The stones looked blacker than they had in the darkness, and there were many of them. I wanted to go down to the cave and count them and see if they would make 2 loops around my neck, but I did not leave the ledge. I stayed there all morning. The sun was high when Rantu barked, and I heard steps below me. The girl came out of the brush singing. She walked to the cave, but when she saw the necklace lying in the rock, she grew quiet. She picked up the necklace and put down again and peered into the mouth of the cave. 2 of my baskets were still in there. Then she went and drank from the spring and started off through the brush. I jumped to my feet. "Ta-dunk!" I cried, running down the ravine. "Ta-dunk!" She came out of the brush so quickly that she must have been waiting nearby to see if I would return. I ran to the rock and put on the necklace and turned around for her to admire it. The beads made not 2 loops, but 3. They were long and oval instead of round, which is a very hard shape to make and takes much skill. "Witcha," she said. "Witcha," I said after her, a word strange in my mouth. And then I said the word that meant pretty in our language. "Wintaya," she said, and laughed, because this was strange to her. She touched the necklace, giving a word for it. I gave mine. We pointed out other things: the spring, the cave, the gull flying, the sun, the sky, Rantu asleep, trading their names for them and laughing because they were so different. We sat there on the rock until the sun was west and playing this game. Then Tutak rose and made a gesture of farewell. "Maine," she said, and waited to hear my name. "Wanapeli," I answered, which, as I have said, means the girl with long black hair. I did not tell her my secret name. "Mane, Wanapetitli," she said. "Pa say no, Tik-tak," I replied. I watched her go through the brush. I stood for a long time, listening to her footsteps until I could hear them no more. And then I went to the headland and brought the baskets back to the cave. Tutak came again the next day. We sat on the rock in the bright sun, trading words and laughing. The sun went fast in the sky. The time came soon when she had to leave, but she returned on the day that followed. It was on this day when she was leaving, and I told her my secret name. "Karana," I said, pointing to myself. She repeated the word, but she did not understand what it meant. "Wanapele," she said, frowning. I shook my head, pointing to myself, and I said, "Karana." Her black eyes opened wide. Slowly she began to smile. "Puseno, Karana," she said. That night I began to make a gift for her in return for the necklace that she had given me. At first I thought I would give her a pair of my bone earrings, but remembering that her ears were not pierced, and that I had a basket of abalone shells already flaked into thin discs, I set about making a circlet for her hair. I bored 2 holes in each of the discs, using thorns and fine sand. Between them, I put 10 ovella shells, where they were no longer than the tip of my little fingers, and thread them all tightly with sinew. I worked 5 nights on the circlet, and on the 5th day when she came, I gave it to her, putting it around her head and tying it to her back. "Wichita," she said, and hugged me. She was so pleased that I forgot how sore my fingers were from boring the holes on the hard shell. Many times she came to the cave, and then one morning she did not come. I waited for her all that day, and at dusk I left the cave and went to the ridge, where I could watch the ravine, fearing that the men had learned that I lived here and would find me. That night I slept on the ledge. The night was cold, with the first wind of winter. Tuk-Tuk did not return the next day, and I remembered that it was near the time that the Aleut hunters would leave. Perhaps they were already gone. That afternoon I went to the headland. I climbed the rock and crawled across it until I looked over the rim. My heart beat loud. The Aleut ship was still there, but the men were working on the deck and the canoes were going back and forth. The wind blew hard and few bales of otter skins lay on the shore, so probably the ship would leave at dawn. It was dark when I got back to the ravine. Since the wind was very cold and I was no longer afraid of the Aleuts would find me, I made a fire in the cave and cooked a supper of seashells and roots. I cooked enough for Rontu and me, and for Tutok. I knew Tutok would not come yet. I put her food aside the fire and waited. Once Rontu barked, and I thought I heard the sound of footsteps and went to the open and listened. I waited a long while and did not eat. Clouds moved from the north, covering the cold sky. The wind grew louder and made wild noises in the ravine. At last I closed the mouth of the cave with stones. At dawn I went to the headland, and the wind had died. Fog lay over the sea, washing against the island in gray waves. I waited a long time for the glimpse of Coral Cove, but finally the sun burned away the fog. The little harbor was deserted. The Aleut ship, with its red beaked prow and its red sails, had gone. At first, knowing that I could now leave the cave and move back into my house, into the headlands, I was happy. But as I stood there on the high rock, looking down the deserted harbor and the empty sea, I began to think of Tuktuk. I thought of all the times we had sat in the sun together. I could hear her voice and see her black eyes squinting close when she laughed. Below me, Rontu was running along the cliff, barking and the screaming gulls. Pelicans were clattering as they fished in the blue water. Far off, I could hear the bellow of the sea elephants. But suddenly, as I thought of Tuktuk, the island seemed very quiet.